I go on long walks near my home most nights. I live in a safe suburban neighborhood. It's a huge grid of residential streets in the middle of which is a big open park type area, about larger than 2 football fields that's next to a school. Last night around midnight, I was walking on the sidewalk next to the park, listening to a podcast, slowly making my way to the school. The school has a big well-lit parking lot in front, with 2 entrances and exits about 25 yards apart. As I neared the school, I noticed a car in the parking lot, with its headlights pointed toward the street. This is unusual for this time of night, especially on a weekday. Maybe it's a cop, I thought. I got closer and saw that it was a beat-up red truck. It had started slowly and aimlessly, driving around the lot. As I passed the first entrance, the truck seemed to notice me and stop. I got halfway to the second entrance when the truck rushed toward it. I assumed the driver wanted to pull out before he had to wait for me to cross. But no, the truck just sat there, idling as I approached. I got to the entrance and saw that the truck was occupied by 4 men. I motioned for the driver to go ahead, but while looking straight forward, he motioned me with his hands to cross. At that same time, I noticed a guy in the back seat, staring at me menacingly. I crossed in front of the truck, expecting the driver to blow the horn or rev the engine, basically just to mess with me. But he didn't. He just sat there watching me. I continued down the road, and as I was turning right onto another street, the truck had exited the lot, turning in the opposite direction. Just a strange encounter, I thought. A few minutes passed by, and I saw the same truck approaching me again. And getting to me would have required circling the park and traveling down 3 additional streets. And to do it so quickly, it would have required some serious speeding. The truck slowed as it approached, almost stopping as it got to me. The occupants stared daggers at me as they passed. It felt like they wanted to do something but lost their nerve. Now I'm a little bit freaked out. A big thanks to my wife for making me watch so much crime ID, I thought to myself. I'm not a paranoid person, so I started rationalizing their behavior. I told myself that they were just cruising around enjoying some weed before going home for the night. That wouldn't have been that out of the ordinary for my friends and me back in high school. But these guys, they looked too old for this, so my gut insisted that something was wrong. Out of an abundance of caution, I walked a little down the street and crouched behind a big oak tree surrounded by bushes on some random person's property. I know this is inappropriate and possibly dangerous, but I hope the homeowner wasn't watching me from his Ring doorbell as I lurked on his property. For a couple of minutes, I crouched there before I saw headlights. It was just the neighbor from across the street arriving home. He entered his house and I breathed a sigh of relief. I told myself that I was being ridiculous. I actually felt pretty embarrassed. Just as I was about to stand up, I heard the rattling of an engine and I saw headlights slowly moving down the street. It was the red truck. I'm sure that I imagined it, but that I thought I heard its brakes squeal right before my hiding spot. I wondered why this truck was apparently speeding to get to me and slowing when it arrived. It didn't seem like chance, and now I'm convinced that the truck was seeking me out. I started running as soon as the brake lights disappeared. I'm a little more than half a mile from home, and I'm not taking any chances. As I turned onto the street that intersected with mine, I saw headlights and heard a familiar engine rattle. I can't say with certainty that it was the red truck, but I immediately turned around and ran to the side of another random home. Making things more ominous was the spooky music and witch's cackle coming from the Halloween decorations next door. I waited another minute, making sure the red truck didn't pass, and I ran the rest of the way home. I walked in out of breath and my wife had asked me what happened. She scolded me for walking so late at night after I had told her the story. The middle-aged woman is strong with her, so she immediately pulled up the Nextdoor app. Apparently there had been several reports of car break-ins in our area attributed to men in a red truck. It's probably not connected, and I was almost certainly being dramatic. I doubt anything would have happened if I had encountered the red truck again, but still, I'm glad that I didn't. Hey everyone, this is a story that I only recently remembered again in a conversation with my fiancé. When I remembered this story, I was overwhelmed by an uncomfortable feeling, similar to what it was like at the moment. I never fully managed to figure out what really happened then, so I decided to share the story now. My older sister had graduated from medical school at the time, and my parents decided to organize a celebration for our family and friends on the occasion of that event. The celebration was held at a cottage of our family friends where we grew up, so I was very familiar with the space. Imagine a large and empty clearing, a large square surrounded by houses and fields between them. A narrow road leading to individual houses runs along the perimeter itself, and at that time it wasn't even fully paved. It was mostly just a dirt road. From that main road, which framed the houses in a square, you could go down into the dense forest that surrounded that square. The depth of the forest was great, and when you turned off the main road towards the path, you had to walk for a long time to reach the river, which was a few kilometers away. All this was familiar to me because I grew up there and spent a good part of my childhood playing in those woods. I was afraid of the forest, but nothing more than normal, and I was always careful not to stray from the path so as to not get lost. But back to the story. My parents had organized a celebration and invited a large number of people, including my cousin P. She and I were close in age and we got along well. As the number of people became tiring for us, we decided to take a walk so that we could go and catch up on life, just the two of us. We were both about 20 years old then, and I led her down the road because I knew the path that I wanted us to take. Down the perimeter, alongside the forest, next to all the other houses so as to not be alone. Everything was normal until we had reached one of the turns for the forest that I mentioned. Somehow we both stopped without saying a word and looked in silence at the path that stretched deep into the forest. Let's go inside. I was the first one to speak after some time, even if this is something that is not typical for me. As I mentioned earlier, I was always a little afraid of the forest, especially after I got lost in it once. That was when I was still a child, but they had managed to find me quickly after my screams rang out throughout the area. For this reason, I never left the road without my older friend, A, who carried a stick with him, and his hunting dog, May. But now something was different. Yeah, let's go in there, it won't hurt us, I said to my cousin and stepped inside. I don't want to, I'm scared, answered my cousin, but I persistently assured her that everything was fine, and in the end she still followed me because I was already 30 steps ahead of her. Al, this isn't a good idea, let's go back. He tried to convince me once again, but I walked forward as if in a trance. Everything's fine, I repeated to her. After some time, when we were already deep in the forest, I finally stopped myself. I couldn't take a step more. I was paralyzed. It was as if a part of me tried to break away from whatever was pulling me inside. I was overcome with fear. My heart was pounding hard and my breathing had stopped. It was as if all sounds had stopped. It was daytime, but there was no sign of life. Not a bird, not a rabbit, not a butterfly. Only silence and those trees that I had a feeling would stretch out their branches and trap me forever. And P was a few steps behind me. I'm going back, I can't do this. And she ran away the same way that we came in. Her voice was trembling and I could feel the panic in it. After another moment, I managed to break away and run after her. We ran without looking back as if something was chasing us until we had reached the entrance of the place from which we entered. A little further towards the cottage, we finally stopped as we finally felt safe, but we didn't look back out of pure fear. We tried to catch our breath, but only then did we talk as we were walking back home, fast and still scared. There was something there, we were sure of that. I wasn't afraid at first when I went inside. In fact, it was as if something was calling me, wanting me to follow it. But my cousin's frightened voice and presence tore me out of the trance. It had called me. I'm afraid to think what would have happened if I had been alone, and if there wasn't somebody to pull me back so I wouldn't go too far. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew when we got to that road that I had to go inside. It scares me, and I can't shake the fear that overwhelmed me and my cousin after that event. Any thoughts on what happened here? Why did I go inside and persuade my cousin to follow me? Why did she manage to snap me out of it, and why were we both so scared? There was no sound and no voice and nothing. Just the unspoken words of something that I heard and my cousin didn't.